So just tell me the story of that piece of real estate. Where is it true that it was supposed to be just where you guys live?
My husband Irene and I during COVID. So actually, he got the plot in 2019. During COVID, we started playing with the idea of what would our dream retirement home look like.
Dream house.
It was very much from a place of passion and what speaks to us and as a family. And even now in converting it into hotel and members club, I do hope that people feel like it's a home away from home.
Yeah. When did you guys realize that maybe it makes more sense for this to convert it into no longer be our retirement home, but rather a space that you can share with people for a few dollars here or there?
From a utilization point of view, it was like, how much are you actually going to use it? Even if you were to say all the holiday time, let's take it, it's still
literally maybe 2 weeks of holiday.
Yeah, and even if we said, okay, let's work the summer when the kids are on break, we're in Kigali, it still didn't seem to make sense over the long term. So at that point, it was like, okay, this is very beautiful. Let's try opening it up and sharing it with the world and seeing.
This is the very, very best. I introduce the very, very next. Big deal, you know this is the big league. Unsanga mu mihanda ya Kigali, mega big fish. Word on the street turakaze. Habari gani, mumeze mute. Yutse nshima Imana kuva honda mukiye. If you want the long form, come close murabure. Wait, what?
The long form.
What did he say?
The long form.
What?
The long form.
The long form. The long form. Hello there. My guest this week on the Long Form podcast is Sheila Kyarisiima, a partner at NISK Capital, a corporate finance and investment firm. Sheila was appointed by the President of Kenya, William Ruto, to the National Investment Council of Kenya in 2023. Sheila is also the executive co-chair of Spelman Estates Limited, a real estate development company that owns several well-known properties, including Silverback Mall and the Uber Lux Pinnacle Hotel. In this week's conversation, we discuss her personal journey, the highs and lows of running a luxury hotel, and how to create value in real estate. We also discuss strategies that Rwandan SMEs should use to tap into the global and local money markets, and also attempt to predict what the future holds for East Africa's economy. Hey, before we get started, almost 70% of you who watch this podcast haven't subscribed yet. If you've been enjoying these conversations and want us to bring even bigger guests and tell even better stories, that simple click really helps us grow this community. It's free for you, but it means everything for us. So hit that subscribe button, join the community, and let's get into today's episode. Sheila.
Yes.
Welcome to the Long Form podcast.
Thank you. Good to see you.
You look lovely in red.
Thank you.
So I just got to know you. It's been maybe a couple of weeks now. I came to visit you at the Pinnacle. Beautiful place, by the way. And to prepare myself better for this podcast, this interview with you, I kind of did a bit of a deep dive into who Sheila is. Now, you have 2 master's degree from Harvard.
Yes.
Public policy and MBA, and a chemical engineering,
civil engineering
university degree from Brown.
Yes.
Really cool. Congratulations. Those are what I think they'd call Ivy Leagues.
Yeah.
But when I came to visit you at the hotel, to be honest, I saw you running around, talking to people, looking at, bookings and talking to staff. And I was wondering, does this lady also have, you were literally acting like a GM, a general manager of a hotel. And I was wondering, does this lady have a degree in hospitality that I do not know about? Do you?
No. I'm learning on the job, I guess. Yeah.
What's that experience like?
I think with the Pinnacle, what it's been has been more of taking a challenge around any startup, right? I always think about the phase of a company or a business requires a different set of skills, whether from the founder or the management team. That experience, I say I'm in the school of hard knocks with hospitality. It's not something that I've studied or experienced before. Professionally, I've been in finance majority of my career, some public sector. So really for me, it's been an all immersive experience. But I think about it as this is a startup. The Pinnacle at this stage is a startup, and it requires a certain skill set from me and a certain level of involvement that perhaps I didn't anticipate myself, but also that might seem unusual, maybe from the perspective of you're looking at it as an owner doing what might seem mundane or more GM-like.
How hard has it been?
Quite hard, quite difficult.
To be a GM?
It's difficult. I say potentially it's been the most difficult. It's probably one of the most difficult things I've had to do.
Why?
There's an element to hospitality that's just, it's high pace. You're constantly on. You're constantly dealing with people. You're dealing with your team. You're dealing with the guest, thinking about the guest experience. It never turns off, right? As a hotel, it's a 24-hour operation. So the level of intensity and the level of engagement, people engagement, is at a whole different level. When I compare it to our other business, investment banking, corporate finance that I've been doing before, it's like, yes, you face the clients, you have that conversation, you're trying to have a transaction, you face the investors, but in between that, you're actually in your office. You're working through the dynamics of it, not necessarily with some interaction of people, but not a heavy interaction of people. So that aspect of it, every time you have people involved, the complexity of the situation, I think, increases. And then it's a 24-hour clock in some ways. And it's by function of the sector and function of the fact that it's a service sector and it's a hotel and it's people facing. Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself in this role as GM?
What have I learned? A lot. I think it's funny. So my husband actually says that apparently I'm a great operator. Because our other businesses have been advisory, passive real estate. He was like, you can actually run an operations, like a massive operation.
Be in the kitchen.
Be in the kitchen, walk through the kitchen. I think they hate when I do that. Anytime I do a back of house work, I think it's not their best time as a team. But I think, I've learned that I can use skill sets that I have and apply them in a completely different way. I've also learned, there's a part of it the part that I really enjoy is the idea of building this African luxury brand. That's what actually gets me up. I'm like, look, because everybody needs the motivation for what they're doing. For me, it's like, I'm building this very Rwandan, very African luxury brand. And I'm unapologetic about that. Yeah. So all the other things I need to do to achieve that, even when some of them I might not enjoy them, I accept them as part of the journey because that's sort of my North Star. That's what I'm focused on.
But, okay, so let's talk about the building of an African luxury brand in hospitality. Yeah. Is it just going to be hospitality, or do we see, a Pinnacle soap and a Pinnacle olive oil? Like, is it within that framing of staying in hospitality?
Potentially. So right now, the way I look at it is that as an ultra luxury boutique hotel and members club, right? That's Rwandan owned and has really positioned itself for the luxury market. There's so much we could do with that brand, right? Like, we're a very young brand right now, but how did it come to be? I mean, I talk about it as it was a big passion project and a big art project, if I can say. It was literally a combination of creativity and fun and quirkiness and unusualness, and we leaned into that, right? So what we could do with it a couple of years from now, I don't know, but I wouldn't be close to it. I think for now it's like, okay, let me stabilize the two pillars, which is sort of the hotel aspect and the members club. And outside of that, what will be born out of that, let's see.
Did you ever see yourself? So, I mean, you're a civil engineer.
Yeah.
Math person.
True.
Did you ever actually see yourself, in life, right? Life takes you right, left, and center, right? But when you're younger or when you're kind of trying to map your career path, you see yourself going in certain directions, right? And you kind of plan for that. You map for that. Did you ever see yourself waking up early in the morning, having phone calls with chefs, having phone calls with front of house? Like, is that something that 5 years ago, did you ever think that would happen?
Absolutely not. I never saw myself in hospitality at all. I don't think that's not something that was even in my career prospects. What I do say is that as an engineer, it was a question I got about finance some time back. How did an engineer end up in finance, And I say when I was going to college, and my dream was always, at that time it was to build roads and build buildings, right? And I say the core of what I do has remained. It's to build things. Sometimes it's building teams. Sometimes it's building a brand like now, which I had not seen. So that core around building something has remained all through my career. The shape of what I'm building has changed. And certainly, I never thought I'd be in hospitality. Like this is one of those things that, I've found myself in by a product of change of use for the property. I think, and in some ways it's life, they say you plan, right? You plan and then life has its own quirks.
You plan and then life happens.
Life happens. This is one of those, life has happened and there's some very exciting things about it. But if you had asked me 5 years ago, it was not even on my radar.
Yeah.
Like I would not have told you, no. I'd be like, how? Where?
But yet you've invested in so many other places. Why was hospitality the thing that you had never actually really invested in before?
Yeah. So I think we see a lot of businesses on the financial services side, right? And what the perspective it gives you is what businesses are operation heavy and much more difficult, very specific from a skill set perspective, very operator heavy vis-a-vis what businesses could be a bit more passive, right? We all think about the journey of like you work and then you hopefully invest in more passive things, right? Things that are a bit easier to run without active engagement. So hospitality wasn't necessarily on the radar because one, I think about it as an industry that requires very specific skill sets. And also it's very operator driven and very demanding in that way. So it wouldn't have been one that I would have selected off the bat. Like if I was like, oh, where do I invest and what are my options and what should I look at? It wouldn't be the immediate one for those reasons.
But now, I mean, when we spoke, I remember I saw the Pinnacle being built, right? I used to go on long walks in that area, beautiful parts of Ribeiro. And I remember asking someone, I was curious. You see something like that massive coming up, you ask and you're like, there's someone, it's someone's personal house. I'm like, okay. So when I spoke to you and asked you about it, you said, yeah, actually that was supposed to be a private property, our family's private property. So just tell me the story of that piece of real estate. Where is it true that it was supposed to be just where you guys live?
I guess it's true that, well, it was built for personal use. The extent of personal use, whether it was living there permanently, using it while we're on holiday or while we're in Rwanda, because we're based out of Kenya.
Okay.
And the story in Nairobi. The story of it is my husband Irene and I during COVID. So actually, he got the plot in 2019. During COVID, when the world shut down for our business, it was completely shut. So we had a lot of time sitting at home. He really loved the show Selling Sunset. Selling Sunset.
On Netflix.
On Netflix. So everyone had some things they were doing in COVID. You wake up, do some workout, find what to do. I was watching Selling Sunset a lot of the times.
So those who don't know Selling Sunset, okay, what is it?
It basically,
I know what it is.
Okay, true. It's a Netflix show that showcases some of the most beautiful properties in Hollywood. Okay, now they have a few other places that they're showcasing, but it started out with Hollywood. And the idea is that you're selling sunset, right? So it was very inspiring. Inasil Mazir is another person we watched a lot, his shows. And from there, we started playing with the idea of what would our dream retirement home look like.
Dream house.
And so I say it came to be, he had a laundry list, I had a laundry list, we combined the laundry lists. And one of our friends used to call it a monstrosity. The monstrosity.
I guess when you have two different ideas of what it is, and then you're trying to bring those two ideas into play, it becomes interesting.
Yeah, it becomes interesting. So, and then we said we'll take our time, right? We were in no rush. We were not doing it under any kind of pressure. And so that's why I say it became a fun art project. Everything there was either selected by him or by me. He did everything, had structure, everything construction, if you get a tour from him, you'll hear a lot about the aluminium and the wood flooring and the tiles or And if you get a tour from me, it's all about how I wanted the spaces to feel like and to look and what I was creating with the themes there. So it's a passion project. It was born out of, I think, the depth of actually like love and passion and creativity. And I think if we ever set out to do a hotel, if we had even ever set out to do a hotel, we would not have built that. It's because we set it, the purpose was purely like from a place of love and passion, right? And no guardrails. So, some of my decisions there were very bold, and some of his decisions too. Bold color palettes, right? But I used to think, because sometimes I'd select something and, someone would say, what if it's too much? Or people, I'm like, it's okay. It's for me. Yes. It doesn't matter. Same with the art. I picked pieces I love. It was, people would sometimes they'd try to tell me, oh, you must buy this art piece because it's so and so artist. I'm like, but it doesn't speak to me. And I'm not doing this for an external audience. I'm doing this for an internal audience. So it was very much from a place of passion and what speaks to us and as a family. And even now in converting it into hotel and members club, I do hope that people feel like it's a home away from home. Yeah.
So when did you guys, you buy the land in 2019. So, and COVID hits us. You guys start, we are watching, Selling Sunset and all that. How long did it take to actually build?
So it took us 5 years. We broke ground in July of 2020. We completed we had our first event in April of 2025.
And when did you guys realize that maybe it makes more sense for this to convert it into no longer be our, retirement home, but rather a space that you can share with people for a few dollars here or there?
So I think about 3 years into construction, we started saying, oh, maybe this is a bit much. But we moved along again because it was not, we were busy with everyday business and our everyday life in Nairobi, and we continued with the project. But about 3 years in, we had some of that thought, but didn't actively, we kept saying, okay, let's push ahead. And then I remember last year, and I was pushing Irene a bit more to convert it. And then 2024, in January, I'd come from one of the final trips selecting things. And it was like, yeah, I think you're right. Let's convert it.
Why did you change your mind?
So we looked at it. I mean, our business in Nairobi is what has actually produced the value that we're able to invest, right, in these assets. And so we knew that we need to keep that business going, right? It's a good business, and we need to keep
the Nairobi business.
The Nairobi business, which is an investment banking business. And so, we still looked at it and said, we are still based in Nairobi because of work reasons, and it covers 6 countries. But for finance, you need to be in Nairobi. It's like the capital. Yeah. And so from a utilization point of view, it was like, how much are you actually going to use it? Even if you were to say, all the holiday time, let's take it, it's still...
Literally maybe 2 weeks of holiday.
Yeah, and even if we said, okay, let's work the summer when the kids are on break, we're in Kigali, it still didn't seem to make sense over the long term. So at that point, it was like, okay, this is very beautiful. Let's try opening it up and sharing it with the world and seeing. So it's one of those... That's why I'm saying 5 years ago, so maybe 2024, when we're like, okay, let's convert it. And actually, when we decided to convert it, we also looked for operators, right? We looked for a brand to take it on. We're like, okay, let's convert it, but let's it be somebody else's headache.
And then what? Well, obviously, that's not what you chose.
Well, they didn't choose us because it's 9 keys, right? So with 9 rooms, most brands will tell you we need a minimum of 30 keys for it to make financial sense in the cookie cutter way of their business model, right? So, I mean, it's 8,500 square meters of built up area. So it is massive, but so the 9 keys in relation to the size didn't make sense for them. They were like, you have all this entertainment and F&B space, but you only have 9 rooms. So I can't fit the 9 rooms within my business model. We spoke to we had somebody, an expert in this field. They looked for us. They went around looking for who the right brand partner would be. But a lot of it, the conversation almost stopped at 9 keys. No, because you haven't met the minimum threshold. And so that's when it dawned on us. We're like, okay, I guess we've done 1 or 2 entrepreneur things. I think we can do this one. And that was about September last year, when all the conversations around a brand taking it over were no.
Yeah.
Then we're like, okay, what do you take when you get... they say when you get lemons, you make lemonade. We're like, nobody wants to do this. Let's try and do it. Let's take the skills of running a business, building a company, and apply it here and see where we get to.
So there was a lot of public interest, obviously. I mean, looking at the space, the story behind it. You opened officially earlier this year. You actually opened with a bang. Very few people get to the bang that you got, which was, your first, I guess, major event was a dinner whose guest of honor just happened to be the president of the republic, President Kagame. You must have been sweating bullets.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think, that's right. You see something like that and you see the photos and it looks great. I always say, if you know the sweating of bullets by everybody that was happening in the background for like 2 to 3 days to the event. It was really a blessing and an honor. And it's, again, one of those things that happened more naturally. So the event, at the time, I think the event was booked. They hadn't, at least we were not aware of who the guest of honor would be. And maybe it was, or it hadn't been confirmed. I'm not aware. But we only got to know very close to the event, right? And there's a different type of
energy,
pressure that comes with preparing for a head of state, and rightly so. But I think as the event so I almost say that we got catapulted and then we started working a little bit in the background. But then I also say it's very much within the character of how things also leap forward in Rwanda, right? Sometimes if you wait to be 10,000% ready, maybe you'll never get there.
Yeah.
The 80-20 rule as well.
What is the 80-20 rule?
Basically, if you can do 80% of the things right, even if the 20 is not great, go with the 80.
Really?
If you wait to be 100% perfect, do we ever achieve 100% perfection?
And that's interesting, because I also, with my team, I always tell them, perfect is sometimes the enemy of good.
100%.
Right? And sometimes we want perfection, but then it stops you from action.
From getting anywhere, yeah.
Yeah.
I think that as long as you adopt, well, what I tell my team, and I even say with myself, my attitude is like, what can I learn? Every day, what can I learn? What am I learning from this experience. If you adopt an attitude of learning and being open to being wrong and changing when you're wrong, then you can launch. Because each time, even today, you'll come and find some 20% that's not right. But for me, it's like, okay, for that 20% of today, what am I prioritizing? And tomorrow there'll be a new 20%. And making peace with that. I don't believe in absolute perfection. I don't think it exists. And in an entrepreneur journey, you have to accept that, right? There are things you wish you could do better, that we could do better even as a brand and a product, 100%. But I think we're doing a lot of things right. And so it's like, let's focus on those as we improve the others. And let's be open to being wrong. So the other thing I always tell the team, I say to them, I've not been in hospitality. So I'm also learning. We can fail, but we fail fast and pivot. Right? Like, don't stay in the failure and stay in it for a week. Fail and change. If the data is telling you this is not working, accept it and switch from that. If we have that mindset, I think then you can reach farther.
Do you think that perhaps that mindset, right? In my experience as a podcaster, and I'm not saying that, but I think there could be things that we share. My experience was I had no one giving me the rules. So I'll try something. If it did not work, I'll immediately pivot and just do something else because there was no constitution, there was no roadmap. I created my own roadmap as I went along. And maybe it helped the fact that I was not a professional video person. No, I was a writer, right? So this was not really my medium. And I sometimes wonder if because I was not coming from the space as a professional, I allowed myself the freedom to learn from my own experiences and not feel bad that I've made a mistake versus some people that I've seen who are professionals but just cannot start something because a similar quote-unquote podcast simply because they're like, well, we don't have the perfect lights, I don't have the perfect camera, I don't have the perfect crew, I don't have perfect setting, I don't have... And I'm wondering if that was also your mindset, is that we do not have a roadmap. We just know where we want to go. We want to be the best that we can be. I'm just wondering, like, it must have given you so much freedom that there is no, big daddy brand telling you that this is how we do things, because then it allows you to put your own stamp on this thing and learn. I'm rambling a bit, but I'm seeing a lot of similarities between our journeys. Obviously, mine is not a multi-million-dollar investor.
You're right. In some ways, it's a double-edged sword. So on one hand, as an independent brand, like owner-led, there is that freedom, right? And in some cases, it's like we cannot be an X brand. We cannot be a Y brand. It's just not possible. We're not that. We're not even set up to be that. But at the same time, for the segment we're playing in, there is a lot of like, but in luxury, this is how it goes. But in luxury, this is the expectation. But in luxury, you must change this and this. So you must look at this and this. So there's some general guardrails. And I'm also a firm believer in but who made the rules? So who made those in my luxury, this is how it's going to work, right? There's some things to say, let me show you a different, maybe an additional, let's expand what luxury looks like. What does luxury look like from a very warm African setting, right? Because some of these brands, we've stayed in some of these properties, very high-end properties, and they're very stiff, right? And there's a place for that. There's some that are fun. There's some that... So I think we're challenging also what it's not quintessential luxury at all, but does it not make it luxury? So there's also an aspect of it where you're like, okay, I understand these are the industry sort of parameters that we should play within, but... why not add a little bit of spice or, quirkiness to what has been traditional even within the space? And that's what I also tell my team. I say, let's have fun with the brand. It's a fun brand. It's a quirky brand. let's still deliver on certain parameters because we are playing in the luxury space, but let's expand what that looks like from our perspective. Because I think also people are always looking for something fresh, something different. And I hope we've achieved that even in just the way the spaces, the infrastructure we're providing. Now it's a hotel, but it doesn't feel like a quintessential hotel. And leaning into that idea that when you travel, you can have a home away from home. You don't always have to be, in a room that's white, gray, or beige. Sometimes maybe blue or green. But, so I think, that's the double-edged nature of it. There's some advantages to it. But at the same time, if you are trying to penetrate a space as new, independent, unknown, sometimes you have to give in to kind of just get into the space as well.
So let's talk about the nuts and bolts, right? So we've kind of stayed very high end, at a very high level. Listen, you're a business person, right? So you're a numbers person.
Yep.
You want a business to be in the black. You don't want a business to be in the red.
Yep.
Now, when we spoke, you told me about certain aspects of what the cost is of running a space like that one. And you're telling me that, just the running costs, just to, electricity on, water bill, air conditioning, staff, it runs into the hundreds of millions of francs per month. Now, there's that. And then there's just the building itself, right? Because it also cost, what? What did you tell me? It was over
some big number.
It was over 10 million, if I'm not mistaken. So that's a lot of money. And you're in a business, so you're trying to recoup. I mean, if you had kept it within a family dwelling, then you're not really, you're using it more for its aesthetic, the pleasures of having a family home. But now that you've pivoted, you're trying to make money. Now, how do you, and this is where I'm trying to understand the business of such a space like that, when you have not more than 10 rooms, and you have that kind of financial outlay, and then you have the OPEX, you have the CAPEX. The CAPEX of the building itself, the OPEX keeping it running. What is the strategy? How do you turn, I guess, something that is as expensive as that, and a drain to the finances of your business into a profitable venture? What is the strategy? What are your timelines? Like, what are you doing?
Yep. So I think this is one of the things we've had to evolve on as well, because it was not an industry we had studied specifically and intensely prior to entering, but you have to have a long-term view. So we have a long-term horizon with this asset, and I think there's an aspect of it about just capital preservation and capital appreciation over the long haul. Which,
when you say long-term, what do you mean?
For sure, in excess of 10 years, right? Maybe even 15, depending on where we end up.
Of when you break even, is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Okay.
And this assumes, so the rooms business model is the most important business model, because your margins on rooms are much healthier than your margins on F&B.
That's food and beverage.
Food and beverage, yes, correct. Now, obviously, with a 9-room property, there's also a price point below which, given the investment in the actual CapEx, it doesn't make sense then for you to sell your rooms. So if you're not able to sort of penetrate the market, creating that exclusive and luxurious experience with your rooms business, and being able to command, a decent price for it, then below that also, because they're 9 rooms, they're not 100. There's a point at which it stops making sense from a pricing perspective. So our strategy there is really to focus on the ultra luxury tourism and leisure market, particularly on their way to the gorillas. So, the benefit is that we are an extension of what's already been happening in the mountains. there's, a couple of luxury resorts there. Maybe altogether they have about 50 rooms or so. So what I say, can we get 1 out of 4 people going to the Gorillas on their way to stay with us? Now that's a conversation with the tour operators, right? And because they're the ones who sell those packages. And it's also a conversation around normalizing the luxury in Kigali. So of course they're used to selling sort of your quintessential branded hotels within Kigali.
So a Marriott.
Marriott, right? I didn't want to name names. And it's at a much lower price point, right? But if you're a luxury tour traveler, if you're a luxury traveler and you've saved up for this once in a lifetime trip and you already have a budget, a healthy budget, $50,000 budget to go to the Gorillas, I think adding a night or two at our property is not going to change your decision.
How much is a night?
So our rack rates start from $4,000, which is like our standard.
What's a rack rate?
So our standard rate, according, that we've set based on different market factors and our business model, is starting at $4,000. Okay. And that's about 10 to 15 per night. 10 to 15% lower than what is being charged in the mountains. Now, to penetrate the market, we've been running an opening offer. So the opening offer is 50% off. Okay. So right now you can get a room in the 2,000 range at the property.
That is so cheap.
Certainly. Well, compared to what people are paying in the mountains, right? Yeah. And I get told a lot, look, you're not a one and only a Singita or a Bisate. You're new, you're unknown. It will take time. I understand that. And what I keep countering is, but can we normalize a new player if they're providing value at a similar level? Can we normalize, paying for that? And part of it is a timing issue, which is why we had to change. Let's say if we thought, okay, perhaps our break-even period is 7 years. Maybe now we have to push it to 10 or beyond 10, and so we've had to have that. That's why I said I was in the school of hard knocks. This first couple of months have really taught me a lot. So I think there's an aspect of it that we had to accept and say, look, if this is what's our North Star, right? Building this African luxury brand, we're going to get there. In the meantime, if it means to penetrate the market, I need to offer my rates at 50% off. Let's do it. Let's get started, right? Again, let's not let perfect be the enemy of good. It's that same mindset that we've adopted. And now we are working to educate the tour operators on our offering, the value it provides, because I think they're managing to sell the Gorillas at those price points. But I think Kigali has always been, and cities are always going to be relatively lower or cheaper, certain cities. So I think the task we have ahead of us is also working with the tour operators and showing that there is an experience to be had, even at the Pinnacle, that can be attached to the Gorilla experience. And what does also a city experience provide for the travelers? Because I also think if you come to Rwanda and all you see is the Gorillas and leave, maybe it's a little unfortunate. You should get to know, a capital city is always the heartthrob, right? Like spend some time, get to know the city, get to know the culture, get to know the history. You can only do that if you spend some time in the city. Typically what I understand, these people come in, they're headed to the Gorillas and they're out. Yeah. Because that's what brought them. So I hope with our offering, we're able to extend that stay, even if it's a night or two, and provide them with a Kigali experience that's overall adds to their overall experience of Rwanda.
But that's 9 rooms.
Yep.
You also have 2 restaurants upstairs, downstairs. You have a bowling alley.
4, yeah.
There you go. Then you have a bowling alley, you have a gym, you have a spa, you have a movie theater, you have a swimming pool, you have paddle boards, paddle courts.
Tennis and basketball.
Yeah. Listen, that's too much for maybe 9 tourists. What's in it? Okay, so the person who's probably listening to this is not someone who's going to come to stay at the hotel. So what's in it? What do you offer other people who are not necessarily staying there?
Yes, that's a good question, which is why we created the Members Club. And I tell people, if you look at the economics of the Members Club from a payment, because the first question I get, how much is it to be a member?
How much is it?
It's some amount.
How much is it?
So our membership is 8 million francs.
Okay.
for an individual, 8.5 for a couple.
Okay.
And there's a minimum fee if you add your kids. And so obviously a couple membership works out better. And we have corporate memberships at 35 million per year. However, we're running a 15% off for our first 100. So it comes to about 7 point something for the couple and about 30 million for the corporate, which is not far from what golf is offering, by the way. It's almost equivalent. But what I tell people is think about it. If you calculate the math on a monthly basis, it's a little bit more than a gym membership. It will work out to maybe 300 something thousand per person or 400,000 per person, right? And in that, we're giving you full access to sports amenities you've mentioned, gym, steam sauna, jacuzzis, the tennis courts, paddle court, all of that. Sports and wellness infrastructure, I would say. We have some member-focused programming that we're curating.
What do you mean?
So, for example, we'll have wine and cheese tastings. Oh, some will be culinary based. So hopefully in the long term, I hope to bring even some like celebrity chefs and things like that. Some of it might be industry specific. So once we get a cohort of certain members doing some kind of fireside chats that are helpful for the industry experts. We have a business center. So in the business center, we have one big conference room and 2 breakout rooms. So utilization of our meeting spaces is part of the membership package. With members, your rates on event bookings for any of the spaces will be discounted. So members generally have preferential rates. And the idea there is that you are partnering with us
including
upfront,
on F&B?
Including on F&B.
Okay.
So for example, for food and beverage, non-members are subject to a minimum spend, depending on the outlet. That minimum spend can start from 100,000 per person.
What do you mean? Let's talk about that. Wait, what? So
Yeah.
I go there and before I even start talking,
No.
No, what I mean is when I sit down,
Yeah.
right? So like I will have to walk into this space. There's a minimum spend.
If you're not a member. So a member would not be subject to any of that. A member can come and have water, complimentary water in the gym and leave, or coffee and leave, right? If you're a non-member, the reason why we have to have a differentiation between members and non-members, right? And I think long-term, once we hit our member target, it might be that non-members can only come when they're hosted by a member. And the minimum spend is really to manage our foot traffic. And also, what we're offering a lot of set menus. It's more of upscale dining. Yes, we have a brunch, which is where it starts at around 100,000. And then the set menus start at about 150,000 per person. So, we also want... You've talked about what does the economics and what does the math look like. Between the privacy and leisure that we're targeting for a rooms business, on the other side, the utilization of the rest of the infrastructure has to tie in seamlessly, right? So we're not going to be a high foot traffic place, but we need warm enough foot traffic, right?
Yeah.
And our Sunday brunches have become popular. You could almost argue, maybe that's a relatively high foot traffic because it ends up being about 50 packs on Sunday brunches. So we are cognizant of, being accessible within the market. Like we're not, it is aspirational, but we are also, what we've decided to provide, and it's been a decision from a culinary perspective, is also quite elevated. And so when we looked at the culinary space within Kigali, we're saying, what else can we add to that space? What can we provide that's not currently being provided? And so I think maybe we got a little bit of I don't know if it's a negative rep or it is a rep, whatever it is, around our pricing. But if you understand value for money, and the other thing I always tell people is, why is it that we, as Africans, we're willing to go and pay for these things anywhere else in the world, but not in our own home? I really think it's a big food for thought. When we get pushed back, whether it's on the pricing, 150,000 per person for a set menu.
It's about $100.
$100. You go to
It's a
Dubai
lot,
but go to any of these major cities offering luxury in a luxury restaurant, you'll pay way more than that. Go to a Michelin star restaurant, you'll pay way more than that. So yes, we're not yet Michelin starred, but we're really trying to provide an elevated culinary experience. So what I tell some of the pushback I've had is, okay, yes, I understand it's a bit shocking because it's new for Kigali. But we had Mezamalonga at 150, by the way, I guess. But my thinking is, if you're able to go and enjoy this and travel and enjoy it elsewhere, I say at the Pinnacle, you travel without catching a flight. So I'm a cheaper travel option than getting on a plane.
Thank you, Kigali Marriott Hotel, for providing a venue for the long-form podcast to record. At the heart of Kigali's hospitality, Kigali Marriott offers everything from luxury stays to premier event spaces, fine dining, and top-tier conference facilities. Keep up with them at Kigali Marriott on socials and visit their website, www.marriott.com. Yeah, and I guess if it's anniversary where you can anniversary dinner, it's a once in a while kind of place. I don't know if it's ever going to be someone's local.
But if you're a member, remember you're not subject to a minimum spend. You can come and have a coffee, you can come and have your meeting and go, right? So it depends on when we think about members clubs, and they're very popular in Nairobi. When we first started our business, one of the first investments we made was into a members club. So we could have a meeting space, we could bring our clients, right? So it has its purpose if you think about it. And if you think about the membership from the perspective of, I'm paying a little bit more than what I'd pay for some kind of wellness membership. Gym is at $250 in some of the higher end places, right? Between $200 and $300 is what I've been told. The math works out to 300 something if you're 2 per month, right? So I think it's about looking at the value that it's giving in a little bit of a different way.
Yeah.
And then with the curation of the member cohort, there's also opportunity for networking, getting to know people, member events. That's what we're hoping to build.
Yeah.
Again, it's unusual in the market. I think the only other members club is golf. And I guess most people go there because of golf. But, I think there's room for it and there's a space for it in the market.
I guess that's the thing with trying out new things.
Yeah.
Right? You first have to fall flat on your face before you get up and pivot and learn.
Yeah.
You've said that you are trying to make the Pinnacle Africa's next big luxury brand. Do you see yourself maybe going to other countries, or do you have a plan to go to other countries, or do you have a plan to maybe go to Kigali like everyone else? And
No, so maybe I plan to make it an exceptional African luxury brand, whether it's the biggest. I'm not thinking about big or not, but an exceptional African luxury brand. I think that in terms of expansion, I think it will naturally, it's one of those things where I say it's been one of our biggest R&D experiments, right?
That's research and development.
Research and development, yes. In the sense that, we've been experimenting with which way to take the business model and seeing the market response. But I do think it could present an opportunity to do things elsewhere. I don't know. I think it's keeping an openness to where it could grow. So I always think that if you do something really well, if you focus on doing the thing in front of you and doing it really well, what it's meant to produce will come after that. So for me right now, it's focusing on making this really an exceptional African luxury brand. If it does become the biggest, well and good. If we do expand to other places, well and good. It might be a bit early to say whether or not we will. And I think when it comes to, I also believe a lot in partnerships, right? So with the gorillas, you already have these brands that are sitting there and are doing well. Can we have some kind of, let us be the Kigali extension. Maybe we don't need to be in the mountains because there's enough options in the mountains, but you don't have options in Kigali. So can we be that extension? And you're right, in terms of the ultra luxury space, we are the first in Kigali. So we are paying a price for being the first in Kigali in the sense that we're going to get a beating on our positioning. We're going to get a beating on our pricing. So it's a beating we've embraced, but I'm still focused on that North Star, right? And at this stage, I'm like, if I can work with partnerships to go further, faster, I'll do that first before thinking about building something else.
Yeah. Beyond, let's move away from hospitality. I think we've talked about that in quite a lot of detail. You're also a major player in the real estate space in Kigali. Let me ask you. So you guys at Spelman, as you're co-chair, you have various properties in Kigali. What do you think stands out? Because you also have properties probably elsewhere in other countries as well. So what stands out? What do you think stands out to you in the Kigali real estate market?
Stands out in what sense?
Well,
Like, why did we invest here?
no, not just that.
Yeah.
Like, so every real estate market has its, I guess, it's the way it works, right? Because you're in the business of making money, right? So there are certain things that maybe might work in, say, Nairobi that won't work here, right? There's things that will work here that will not work in Kampala. So I'm just kind of curious because at the end of the day, there might be someone who's listening to this conversation, and we have lots of people in diaspora who listen and might take something from this conversation about, they might take something from your knowledge of real estate and the lessons that you've learned. What works, what doesn't work, what are the opportunities, what are the things that you should look out for.
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, hey, you do it, and you do it quite well.
Yeah.
So teach us what we don't know.
No, I mean,
Give us a masterclass.
so I think what we've learned over the time, because we had some residential as well, we realized commercial, depending, again, you said some of your audience might be in the diaspora. The beauty about commercial is that it's less operationally intensive as well. If you have long-term contracts in place and you have a non-cash payment system, it becomes easy to monitor. We're monitoring that.
What do you mean?
So basically mobile money or bank transfers. So you stay away from the cash sort of business, especially if you're not here. I think that helps a lot. Residential is a headache. You always, tenant issues are endless. So I think if you focus, and smaller commercial, it's very interesting also, like some of the smaller commercial, if you look at the return on an individual property basis, because you'll have the small traders, but multiple of them, right? And for the price you paid for the property and the return you're making, it makes some really good. So those, I guess etages and things like that, they can be, from a return perspective, relatively healthy.
Because one of the things that they keep saying about our real estate is that we have too many etages and not enough people.
But the small ones get filled. How many small ones do you see empty? Look at Remera. How many are there? And they full. So the commerce, the trade aspect of the economy is also growing, right? I mean, Remera 5 years ago was very different. So it depends. If you build larger, so it was much more difficult. It's much more difficult to fill a larger asset, let's say a large commercial asset, than it would be a smaller one. Because I think, again, that's where I would say maybe on the demand side, it's saturated in terms of options, right? So
then what, I mean, then if that's what you're saying, and again, you've been in this market long enough, then all these buildings that I'm seeing coming up, these, multi-story buildings, who are they for? Do you think that is good business? Like
So it depends on who your target, who the target market is. I do think that Kigali as a city is growing relatively fast. So Silverback Mall, which is in the Spelman portfolio, yes, filling it when we opened was a bit more difficult in terms of, because it's so large, the over 30,000 square meters, it's a bit more difficult to fill. Now, I think if you target smaller retail, I mean, some of them are, I'm guessing you're thinking about some of the larger malls or some of the, maybe, again, what are we providing from a city experience? Some people travel to cities for shopping. Nairobi has become a destination for East Africans to come and shop. If you're a large mall and you can provide some of these luxury brands, the problem becomes if the price is very prohibitive, again, right? Then people will just wait until they travel to buy. But what can you provide from a city experience? Is shopping one of the things that people are going to start coming to Kigali for? With conferencing and entertainment, right? And events, conferencing and events that are happening in the city now. If you have Africa CEO Forum, somebody has forgotten their shoes. Is there somewhere they can go buy a pair of shoes, Or they need a golf kit. Where can they go get it? So I think as we become larger and larger, and Rwanda has set itself apart for conferencing and events, perhaps that's a market that you could cater to. I do think overall, if I compare to Kenya, the returns in Rwanda have been healthy.
Yeah.
Because the pricing has been better, right? So I think the entry price also determines your return at the end of the day. Kenya has been a little bit more blotted from a pricing perspective because of a lot more capital in terms of purchasing and competition, bidding up the price from a real estate perspective. So there are comparative advantages here in terms of investing in real estate on the commercial side. I think another area that's probably underappreciated is more high-end residential, if you want to develop that. And a really top product, right? Like proper finishings, I think with the growing middle and upper middle class, there's a market for that as well. People wanting something that's nice and even if it's simple but really nice, like finished properly.
Yeah.
I think there's a market for that as well.
You don't think that there's a bit of a property bubble right now?
Here? I don't know, actually. I don't think we've seen it and maybe it's because ours are already existing and running. It could, because sometimes you'll realize the bubble when you're a bit further into the bubble. But if I compare, because my comparison right now is constantly with Nairobi. I think Nairobi definitely has had a property bubble for some time that doesn't bust. It just, I guess it is
keeps
how
getting
it is.
bigger.
Yes. So if I compare, then potentially no, but I don't know. I could be wrong.
I hope you're not. That would suck. You're a huge champion of entrepreneurship, especially as a driver of economic prosperity. Now, in Rwanda, the biggest amounts of businesses are SMEs, right? Small and medium-sized enterprises. And the biggest issues they face when I speak to people who own them, very often, yes, there's skill, but a lot of the issues that they face is a capital or access to patient capital.
Yeah.
So this is me now tapping into your Goldman Sachs investment banking background. Now, you run your own investment firm, right? And so you are probably literally in the business of raising capital. So if I was an SME, right? Let's say I'm the long form SME. I'm trying to raise capital to build, a bigger studio, more equipment, bigger staff, so I can expand this business. But I don't have access to, I don't want to go to banks. The interest rates are crazy. And unfortunately, they start asking you to pay immediately. Family and friends is not really an option for us. We don't really have a lot of rich family and friends who can invest in your dream. You're talking to me now. Tap into all your knowledge of global money markets, regional money markets, local money markets. How do I raise capital?
So I think one of the things to understand about our capital markets is, a couple of things to understand about our capital markets. One, I think historically, banks have predominantly lent to asset-heavy businesses. So the idea that you have some asset, it could start from a house to a commercial property, a physical asset, typically land, etc. They need something that the law can allow them to execute on should you default, right? I think, unfortunately, and this is across East Africa, because with our investment banking business, which is NISK Capital, we've financed across 6 countries in East and Central Africa. The challenge with that becomes that you can find a very good cash flow positive business. So perhaps with long form, with your advertisement, you actually make quite a bit of money. So you're cash rich. But you go to a bank and they're like, what do I have? What can I hold?
What can I take?
What can I take? So the idea of cash flow based lending, unfortunately, is something that has not penetrated our market. There's some international banks more and more that are trying to do it, especially the ones that have presence in South Africa, because they've done it in the South African market. If you have, or in other, like I sit on the board of CIB Egypt, we've been pushing a lot of CIB Egypt subsidiary in Kenya. So CIB Kenya, it's a subsidiary of CIB Egypt. So we've been pushing a lot of cash flow based lending, right? Because if you can follow the cash and ring fence the cash, it's actually better than an asset you might not be able to sell on the market, right? So the first question I'd look at is, what's the health of your cash flows? And if you have a healthy cash flow, is there a kind of a receivables-based financing, which would be the receivables from your advertisement, for example, from your ad revenue? Can we ring fence those, right? So if someone who's advertising on your platform, instead of paying you directly, can we arrange something where they pay the bank, or they pay you directly, but to the bank, and therefore the money is deducted at source. You don't get to see it until I've taken, if I'm a bank, I've taken my money out. So the first thing would be to look at your structure, because obviously as long form, I'd presume you're very asset light. Besides a few of the equipment you have here, nobody anyway is going to secure these. I'd have to look at your cash flow position, right? And see what could you get from a financing perspective there. That's one part about, it's a challenge within the capital market. So there's been a push generally, even with regulators in different places saying, okay, can we lend more to SMEs? Can we look at alternative forms for asset-light businesses? Because there's a lot of asset-light businesses. That's one part of it when it comes to sort of the commercial banking space. The second part of it, and in part of my NISK work, I was looking at raising a fund that was actually focused at a gap in the capital markets. But my challenge there was, a lot of the money that comes in with the funds, like 90% of it, is from development financing institutions, right? Which we call DFIs. Now,
so that's the African Development Bank and all those.
IFC, British International Investment, like those kinds of institutions. They're the ones who fund a lot of funds. Now, this is where the private equity they're mostly in private equity, not so much in venture capital. Venture capital has a lot more private wealth type of money, smaller ticket sizes. The problem with that business model, when we don't have participation from whatever wealthy class we have across the African continent, is that there's a list of conditions you must meet to access that financing.
Which most SMEs don't have.
Most SMEs don't have, but also some of it, if you look at the dynamics of the market, it doesn't make sense. You're not going to do transactions. So it's like you have this fund failing to deploy capital because actually the prerequisites for deploying capital have nothing to do with the economy it's trying to deploy into. So there's that mismatch. But that's because the people sitting in the offices that prescribed how the capital should be deployed are disconnected from the economic reality and industry of the countries they want to operate in. So that has also, there's a time when private equity was huge, or there was a lot of money coming into the African continent. Now the story is capital has dried up. There's always this, we live in a world of extremes of media stories. There's never just like nuance. But a big part of that is there's then a dearth in understanding of what is needed with industry. And this is where also now, if you look at our pension funds all across the board, what are they doing to invest in local SMEs? I know, of course, pension is protected for the people who are retiring, and you have to have there's only so much you can give to alternatives, which would be these kinds of funds that lend to SMEs. But you'll find that a lot of pension funds across the region, if the allocation for alternatives is like 5%, maybe they've done 1%. They're still very conservative. So we have to look, I think we generally have to look at where does our capital sit, right? As African countries, like where does our capital sit? It sits with our pension funds. How can we activate that to support the economy where we need to support it? So there's some dynamics that are sort of systemic, that need more long-term intervention. And then there's some dynamics around the understanding both of the entrepreneur who's trying to borrow and of the current setup that's meant to lend to them that have to be worked out or understood. And the other thing is this, a lot of entrepreneurs so I say that a lot of African entrepreneurs want to be king than be rich. So they'd rather own 100% of zero than 1% of billions. So the openness to an equity partner, I think generally African entrepreneurs, we need to be more open
So an equity partner, for those who don't know, is someone who has a stake in your business.
Exactly. So I can come
An
to you and say,
ownership stake.
Exactly. Maybe I come and I say, okay, you want this financing, give me 20%. This is how I value your business, and I give you X amount of money. A lot of people are like, I don't want anyone interfering in my business. I don't want anyone, it's a very short-sighted way of looking at the long-term opportunity.
No, I go on.
Yeah. So we've found in our capital raising business, and NISK has raised over $2 billion over the past 10 years. We've been around for 10 years now, across 6 countries. We have found that a lot of African entrepreneurs are very hesitant to accept equity, even when they need it, even when that's the best alternative for them. Some will actually say, get me debt over equity. And I'm like, you don't have the cash flow to pay for the debt. They're like, don't worry, I'll get from the other business and pay for this one. I'm like, don't mix it like that.
But why are we so hesitant? Because it's something that I've been thinking about, even for some of the businesses that I have. And it's been a hard conversation to have with people who, and I'm thinking, why can't I give someone 10% that therefore I won't have to go to Bank of Kigali, for example, and then have, someone knocking on my door every 30th of every month, taking money out of my business, yet I've not maybe necessarily grown it. But it's something that you are right. Like, we are not able to share. I think it's a sharing problem.
It's a trust problem.
Right? Why?
I think it's okay, I'll give you examples. I think it's a historical thing also. I've had entrepreneurs who say to me, maybe there's a VC conversation we're having or private equity conversation we're having, and the people in that organization look nothing like them. And they'll come to me and say, African entrepreneurs, because we've been majority supporting African entrepreneurs, and they'll say, do you trust that person? Do you trust that person not to mess me up in my business, right? And I think understanding that there are legal structures to protect both sides and making sure that your legal structures are strong enough in the case of enforcement to protect whether the entrepreneur who's looking for capital or the investor who's put in capital. That's one part of it. The second thing is around governance. A lot of African businesses do not want to face the tough governance questions. They do not want to be accountable for every dollar that moves out of the bank account that has nothing to do with the business. If someone has been mixing personal and business in their so-called SME, now an external party is going to come in, take 20%. No, you cannot put your... Is car fuel, is it in the budget? Has it been approved? Has it gone through the proper approval? Then they start complaining about the restrictions on how they can use their money. No, you now have a partner. You have a 20% partner. You have to be accountable. It has to go by the budget. That's how the business will succeed. I think there's a real governance problem where part of it, I think, is a trust problem. The second part is governance. When they see all the governance requirements, it means to have an equity partner, which means it's taking away their freedom to use their business like an ATM. Then they become hesitant to actually sign on for equity, right? So I think, and now it goes to this idea of separating the personal from the entity as a business as you grow, like making sure your business has its own sustainability and lifeline independent of the founding entrepreneur, and it has systems within which it's governed. Then you can be able to attract capital in a much better way. We've had businesses where it's technically a very good transaction. Then the due diligence process starts, and you find that mixing of personal and professional is so deep that it's so hard to detangle, and then the investor walks away as well, right? So I think as what I would also advise the young entrepreneurs when they're setting up, if you're going to pay yourself a certain amount every month, pay it and put it aside separately, like remove it from the business, versus every expense, personal expense, if you're also tying it to the business. If you have hopes of raising capital, is going to make it very difficult for you later on because your accounting will not add up. And then the true profitability of the business will also be unknown. Yeah. So I've found that for me, I think there's the trust aspect and there's the governance aspect.
So again, I'm a SME sitting across from you and I'm saying, I want to be able to raise capital. You've given me option 1.
The equity.
What are the other options?
Receivables financing.
What's that?
So that's what I was saying. So take long form as the example. if majority of your revenue comes from advertising, and I can look at your ratios in terms of how much capital you need vis-a-vis the cash flow you're getting from advertising, and it's a healthy ratio, we could approach a bank that has a receivables financing solution. Now, typically, the receivable has to be from an entity that's rated to some degree. So, for example, if your receivable is from the Marriott, Marriott is a bank will feel confident that Marriott will pay its bills. If your receivable is from a Sheila or a Jane, they might be like, who's that? We might not be as comfortable ring fencing that receivable because that person could default. So if you're an SME with healthy receivables, right? Especially if you're playing in a space where you have corporate-esque clients, then you could, even though you don't have the assets. Unfortunately, majority of the banks still lend against assets. There's a big opportunity around cash flow-based lending and doing receivables-based financing. And some banks have started to do that in small quantums, but not
Here
a lot.
in Rwanda?
Actually, in Rwanda, I'm not sure. It could be. But definitely in Kenya, we've seen it. I'm sure if you check, it could be. It's worth checking. It's worth checking with, especially those with regional presence. And potentially, it's worth checking. I'm not sure. I don't want to say... we haven't had that situation here. The businesses we've worked with in Rwanda often have assets. Again, that's why I was saying there's a system issue, right? Which starts with that. So I think it would be equity, it would be receivables. It's limited. I'd hope in the future we have more equity type solutions, but being funded by the institutions that hold quite a bit of capital, in this case, pension funds, and understand local industry dynamics to be able to say, okay, our prerequisites for financing within this sector, how do we manage risk? Because financing is all about understanding the risk, then manage it, right? Who understands risk best? People who are in that economy. Once you've understood the risk, you can actually manage it to your advantage as an investor. But if we're still relying on a ton of external capital, which is just generally how the capital markets are now, there's that mismatch. And so you find a lot of SME frustration, which I can understand. And the other thing is, get your customers to pay in advance. Business models where the customer pays first, right? Or paying in advance. You're financing yourself, your working capital cycle without even knowing it.
Fantastic. So now you've invested probably Rwanda, Uganda, Kenya as well. Any other place?
No.
In East Africa? So
no, East Africa. Yeah, okay.
So when I believe that people show rather than tell. Now, based off of the investments that you've made, you appear quite bullish about the East African economy. If you did not feel trust, you would have probably taken your money and put it somewhere else, right? So you're probably thinking, okay, there's going to be a positive gain on my investments. Why do you have such a positive? Because when you think about Africa or some of our economies, you're thinking, it's a dark continent. You look at certain, West Africa, their growth rates are not that great. Southern Africa as well. You look at some of the risks around everything. Someone could say that, business might not be that great. But your actions say, I'm investing and I will invest further because I trust the process. Why are you so bullish on the East African economy? And if you could, peer into your crystal ball, what does the East African economy look like in the next 10 years?
So I think I'll go back to understanding of risk, right? So, and that's why I say, these narratives, the narratives about Africa rising, Africa falling, there's so much nuance in terms of what happens day to day. I think the advantage of doing a financial advisory business has been that we've got to see a lot of industries and we've got to see a lot of businesses. We've got to see a lot of businesses in transition. And I think a big part of our investment approach has been around what is the risk we're taking, and do we have the tools to manage it? And if we don't have the tools to manage it, can we develop those tools so that we can contain that risk? Any investment has the risk aspect of it.
What are the risks in East Africa?
Depending on the country, they vary, right? So do you have currency risk? 100%. If you're investing with any kind of foreign currency and you're earning in local currency, you're always going to have the FX challenge, right? And that risk. Some countries better than others. What does your labor force look like for the type of investment that you're making, for the kind of industry you're investing in? We always look at that because at the end of the day, people make the business, right? So you have those macroeconomic risks that have to do with like currency, inflation, depending on the country. Of course, every so often, again, depending on the country, political risk is always something you have to factor in. But this is where again, I talk about understanding risk. Because until you understand the risk within the operating environment that you are in, then that's what helps you make it's a calculated decision, and it's calculating your risk and still choosing to make that investment. Now, what I challenge a lot of investors today is look at all the political risk that has happened elsewhere in the globe, right? In a world before, you could not make that comparison. It was always like Africa has, East Africa, let's say Africa in general, has much more political risk than other parts of the world. But right now, you could make a different argument in terms of what's happening just globally, right? Be it in Europe, be it in the Middle East, be it in America itself. But people are still going to invest in those countries because they understand and they calculate and they manage that risk, right? So that's a big part of our investment approach. Can we understand, calculate, and manage? If you can do those three things, then you make that investment decision. Now, the next 50 years, 1 out of 4 people in the world will be youth on the African continent, right? If you just think about a long-term, if you're thinking about, and I really believe in building, let Africans also have generational wealth and have businesses that transcend generations. My time in America, I got exposed to a lot of businesses that are multi-generation. And those people had to take the bet back then and take some risks and manage it, preparing for the future generations. And I think that I've seen a lot of businesses in transition that are becoming more professionalized. So these kinds of things we're talking about with the SMEs earlier, shedding some of that, getting professional structures in place, getting proper governance structures in place. You're having a lot more of that happening within East African businesses. We see that quite a bit in Kenya for sure. Also much larger economy. And so with that, that then the longevity is there.
It will outlive the founders.
Which it should. How many businesses outlive the founders today?
Very few.
Exactly. So if you think about, can you invest and structure business that will outlive the founder? For us, that's something we think about. How are we structuring so that it can outlive us? What are the governance tools we put in place to ensure that happens? So there's that long-term bet. And so at the end of the day, when you wait, because you understand the market you're playing in, it still makes a lot of business sense to invest here, right? And that doesn't mean of course, like any investments, we've had some investments go bad, absolutely. Like it's not that it's been a nice rosy journey. We've lost money along the way, but it's part of the game, and I think irrespective of what economy would have played in, would probably still have lost money. I think the other, as an entrepreneur grows, right, you have to be willing to lose money to eventually make money. And part of it is that school fees you're paying for an industry or for your learnings. But being locally present, understanding the market you're operating in, and managing and managing risk is what allows us to continue to reinvest and to bet the long term. And look at the growth rates. In today's, the projected growth rates across East Africa, at least all north of 5%, right? So you could argue, there's some arguments, you can have technicalities around that, but ultimately it's to say directionally the economies are growing. So if you can then balance it off. It's still a good investment decision.
You talked about, generational wealth. Now, this is a conversation that I think we're starting to have in our generation. Our parents or our grandparents did not have generational wealth, or the way we imagined generational wealth was either land or livestock, right? So I've given you a cow, and the
Go
cow
forth and prosper.
Exactly. That's so if you want to create generational wealth, how do you go about that, right? So what's the mindset like? What actions do you have to put in place if you're a young person starting with an idea, but then you're saying, you know what, I want to make sure that my children's children benefit from the hard work that I've put in. What do you, and maybe that's also, to be honest, I won't even pretend and lie to you and say, I also want to learn from you, right? How does my children's children benefit from the work that I've put in the long form?
So I think there's a lot of, again, rethinking that our generation, I hope, does. And I talk to my husband about this a lot, which is divorce your ambition, your achievement, your pursuits from your children. Like, do not expect your children, if they do ever take up or get involved in a family business that you've built, well and good. Of course, that becomes an easier way to transfer generational wealth. But I think the biggest mistake that has been made before is the expectation that they should do that. And then those who end up doing it grudgingly end up destroying the business. We've also seen some cases of that, right? So when you're building as an entrepreneur, build for, if I were not here but my business were to serve my children or their children, how would I build it, right? So as the business grows, who are the professionals I'm putting in place to look after my business? What are the governance structures I'm putting in place to ensure that the professionals do what they're supposed to do? What are the legal structures I've put in place to ensure that in case both professionals and governance fail, we have a backup to legal? And what am I talking about here? Simple things like, let's take the real estate business. We have a CEO who runs the business. It's not necessarily me or Irene running the business. We have a CEO who runs the business. We've put a CFO. We've put structures in place that they should run whether or not we're there. That's the idea, right? Certain phases of the business, especially in the startup phase, they will need us. But as the business grows, who are the people that you've put in place? Professionals who know what they're doing, that can run the business on your behalf whether or not you're there. Then above that, are you putting a board, a real governance board that can hold then the management accountable to the decisions that are being made? And that's over time, right? Like I said, phases of the business. For us right now, we're still very heavily involved. But I always think about that. I'm always saying, what's our governance structure looking like? What are decision-making? How can we empower our team more such that it becomes a well-oiled machine? And then what are the legal structures? So on the back of whatever investment you're making, what are the legal structures in the case that you're not there or your wife's not there? What are the legal structures that would protect the family? Now, when it comes to the children and generation, of course, they say if you want a child to adopt to something, expose it to them early, right? To the extent that you can expose them to what you do, if they're interested. I always say, you should always think, if they're interested, you're lucky. But if they're not, it's okay. Support them in what they're interested in, but let the business serve them. In the beginning, as entrepreneurs, we serve the business and grow it and nurture it. As it becomes mature, it should serve us and our interests and serve our generation. And that's a structural thing. It comes down to your people. Who are you employing? Who are you putting in place? What are the governance structures you're putting in place? And what are the legal structures you're putting in place? And then making peace with, and especially I think this is very difficult for men with sons. And I'm saying this because we have 2 boys. Making peace with that your son is not an extension of yourself, right? And by virtue of that, accept that they might not want anything to do with your business. And maybe the daughter will. But my point is that I think there's always too much pressure, especially if there are boys involved, and there's a big pressure around you must inherit and you must continue to do. And I think about it like, how do I make sure it serves you? Whether or not, if you do choose to participate, great. And if you're not participating operationally, how do I prepare you to participate from a governance level? Right? If you look at some of these large families that have had multi-generational wealth, the ones I'm most familiar with are in the US, you'll find that there is, a Carnegie or a Rockefeller that's, I don't know how many generations removed. They still receive their paycheck and they sit on a board. They're not active in the day-to-day running, but they sit on the board and they observe, and there's many of them, right? So how do you set yourself up that you will then at least have some governance oversight, even if it's not operational? That's how that's how I think about it in terms of how can we as African businesses create generational wealth? Because where we've seen wealth be destroyed is scenarios, and again, the advantage of being in financial services, you see this, scenarios where a business is passed on to the next generation and they wanted nothing to do with it. Let's say, the father came, did manufacturing industry, worked hard, has sent the child to private schools, sent them to the UK and the US, then you're coming back and asking them to work in a factory. They know nothing about the factory, right? And then you find that, yes, they'll take it on, not to avoid family conflict, but from that point on, you see the financials have gone down. They're actually destroying the wealth versus. In that scenario, you could hire a really good factory GM, right? They could keep running that business. You put a governance structure above him. You put a legal structure above that. Every month, the child receives a check, right? And maybe that continues to the next generation. So rethinking the family expectation of passing on the ambition. I hope we pass on the ambition, but the interest, because maybe like we are in finance, maybe our kids will want nothing to do with that. What I just say is that you should be the best. We should push you to be the best at whatever it is that you're good at, talented at, and interested in, than for you to be mediocre or less than mediocre in something that we are interested and talented in.
I totally get it. Now we're talking about kids, and this is the last question. You've given me plenty of time. In addition to all the businesses you run and your GM duties, you have 2 boys to raise.
Yeah.
And a spouse whose relationship with you want to nurture, right?
Yeah.
So how do you balance all these things? How do you be a good mom, good child, good sister, good wife, good GM, good partner in the finance arm, a good co-founder in Spelman in the real estate, and also find time for your own mental health and some alone time? How do you balance everything? How do you keep yourself from feeling a certain level of guilt all the time?
I don't balance everything.
So there you go.
And I think you have to accept a certain amount of guilt, but I think about it in seasons. And actually, it's funny you're bringing this up. We're talking about it with Irene, my husband Irene, not so long ago, about what is the season we're in now. It's a season of stabilizing the pinnacle, right? There are times when I've been able to do drop-offs and pickups for my kids, and attend every school thing. There's been a season when I was able to do that. I'd say this, if I look at this year, they've taken a beating, but what are the systems I've created in place to step in, right? They've gotten a lot of grandparent time, auntie and uncle time, daddy time. So it's...
because the kids are in Nairobi, right? That's where they go to
school?
Yes,
they're in Nairobi. So when I've been here...
Yes.
Exactly. Like now, at least, during the breaks, we can be here together. But I always think about the season, and I think about the timing for the season. So like 2025, I've given it to stabilize the pinnacle, just as an example. And so it means that it might take priority over other things, but towards the end of this year, I should start to see some stability and rebalance, right? And for example, right now, I've not been as active with NISK because I've been focused on Spelman and the real estate side and the predominantly the Pinnacle, right? And so other people, and this is why the institution, there's other team members who have stepped in. Irene is focused on that, and people step in because you've created a structure that allows things to go on whether or not you're there, because NISK is now a 10-year business versus the Pinnacle, which is a couple of months. So the attention it needs is slightly different, especially from me. And with my co-founder, he's paying attention more to the NISK business. So I always think about balance is a tough thing. For the season, it's like, I always think about what am I prioritizing for this season? And then how do I maximize on presence? So I'll do a lot of like the time with my boys, putting my phones completely away. And sometimes it frustrates people because they'll then call me and they can't reach me. But I'm like, okay, if you're going to get 30 minutes of my time today, at least let it be a full immersive 30 minutes versus a distracted 2 hours, right? So as a mom, it's difficult. As a mom of young boys, it's difficult. I do hope that later they'll look and be like, it's inspirational for them, not just from the dad, but the mom too. And it's funny because I think it was my mom or my sister telling me that they were asking, one of them said, these days we do not see mama, but we see papa. So it's a bit of a switch, right? And I take it as the season. What is the season I'm in now? What do I need to do for that season? And if I can put a time frame around the season and rely on my support network. I have an excellent support network.
But again, the mental health aspect, how do you...
my mental health.
Yeah.
So usually I've generally been very good about working out.
Or even physical health, yeah.
Yeah, working out is usually what has been very good for my mind. It has suffered a bit this year, but I'm trying to get back into it, even if it's 30 minutes. So I feel that it's a great release. And I like to do it in the morning, and I feel like it balances me out mentally. I'm a spiritual person. I pray. I'll listen to spiritual meditation. That's also sometimes when I'm very stressed out. I'll plug it in and zone out. I'm aware, because with this phase also, perhaps I've been more stretched than I typically would have been. So being aware of I need a timeout. Let me take my time out so that I can kind of rebalance before I reinteract. I believe you can't pour from an empty cup. Yeah. But it might mean that this season the cup is kind of half full and everybody has to make do with that. And then maybe next year it gets a bit fuller and maybe it's overpouring. So over the lifetime or over the season, then maybe that's where the balance comes in. But within the short spurts, it's very difficult because we all have 24 hours. Yeah. So achieving that with many demands is very difficult. And then increasingly, back to the systems. What am I trying to do with the Pinnacle? Build a system where people do not need me. They should not need me, right? Right now, do they need me? Yes. But ideally, over time, they should need less and less. That's what, I keep that in my mind. And then that will help me achieve better balance.
It sounds to me that you're such a legacy kind of person. You care, not in a bad way. It's something that, you want your life to mean something. You want to have left something, a certain imprint. So this is the last question. On your tombstone,
oof,
we all die.
I know, true.
What are the words there describing your life and who you were?
Oof. Ultimately, I think about, despite, I think that everybody's on this earth with a purpose. We're on a journey, we have a purpose, it's short-lived, and then 100 years from now, nobody will remember anybody. But for me, it's primarily the people closest to me. So who was I as a mother, a spouse, a sister, whatever it is? Those are the people I affect the most. The humanity side of me before anything else I would have done, right? So I'd hope it's just something like incredible human being or builder or champion of others or just support for others. So less about what might be perceived as the external achievements and more about what I left in the spirits of those who would be there when I'm gone. Because the reality of it, like, in I don't know, the 3000s, you think they'll know what anybody was doing in 2025? Okay.
Yeah.
So, but when you're gone, it's the people immediately around you that feel it the most. So what you left with them is what I care about. Ultimately, that's what I care about. Who am I as a human being? And how do I make those in my life, those closest to me, feel? How do I build them up? And how do I live life with them? Because that's ultimately what they'll carry with them when I'm not there.
Yeah. Sheila, thank you so much for your time on the long form.
Thank you.
Did you
Sunny.
enjoy it?
Yeah, it was a fun conversation.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Didn't actually realize.
It started up here, went there.
It's a real conversation.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah.
Thank you so much. It was an absolute
you.
pleasure and honor. And hopefully I'll get my complimentary invitation to the Sunday brunch.
Absolutely.
Thank
You're
you so
welcome
much for joining
anytime.
me.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap for today's conversation. Thanks for staying with us till the very end. It really means a lot. I'd love to know, what was the one moment that really stood out to you? Drop it in the comments so that we can keep the discussion going. If you want to connect with us beyond YouTube or streaming platforms, you can find us on the social media platform of your choice. And if this has sparked something for you, share it with a friend who'd love it too. Until next time, have a great week.